You talked about like the 70% rule that
Yeah.
you're focused on with students. And, I thought that was a really powerful way kind of explaining it. And the one thing that you mentioned is like, where was this when I was 18? And you're like, no, 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 like we're going younger. Like let's
Sure.
teach this early because like the earlier you start, the more benefit this will have long term. So explain that 70% idea that you started
Yeah.
leveraging that you shared with me last week.
So if you're watching, think back to when you were 18, 20, 22 years old, or if you have young children, or let's say these high school seniors, or they're about to leave. And by the way, they're going to, ahead of them is the most important life decision they're going to make. And it deals with money. And I tell kids, I'd probably pop back and go, "Hey, Dale, the person that I choose to marry is my most important life decision." And I'll say this, while that's very important, if we don't get money right, half of our marriages are gone. And many of the other half of marriages that make it, they're not as great as they could be because of the weight of money. So here's the most important life decision a young adult will make in their life. And here it goes. These young adults, when you get out of high school, they're going about to go and start getting their first real job. And when you get that first real job, you're going to get your first paycheck. And when you get that first job paycheck, that's going to be the most money you've ever seen in your life, at least on a regular basis. When you get your first real job paycheck, instead of taking and spending all 100% of that paycheck, I want you to stop and only take 70%. Only spend 70% of it. 70% of that first job paycheck is still going to be the most money you've ever seen in your life. You're at zero.
Mhm.
Make 70 your 100. By the way, the other 30, take 20% of it and invest it, and take the last 10% of it and give it away. I don't care, George, I don't care who they give it away to. Give it away. We'll come back to that point. Make 70 your 100. And here's why they can do that. They don't have a standard of living established yet. And whatever number you accept as your standard, 70%, that becomes your reality. Watch this. It may sting for a month or two, but in a couple of months, you'll never know that 70 is not your. What do you mean? It's just my 100. It's all I've ever known as my 100. That's just my 100. And here's the most important thing that I say. This is why people fly me all around the country. The next statement I'm going to make. They have one shot to make this happen. Because if they take 3 of those first job paychecks, spending all 100% of it, you will never back down to 70. It's over. You'll say you will. You will never back down to 70. It's over. And you will live life like the most of America, Canada, really the world. Here's why. Because most money problems aren't problems about money. I can prove that. 51% of Americans that make over $100,000 a year in America are living paycheck to paycheck. And 30% that make over $250,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. This young girl in a Georgia school system one day in an auditorium, she said, "I can't live on 70% of my income." Now, she's on a part-time high school job. And I said, "Why can't you live on 70% of your income?" And she said, "Because it cost me $100 to get my nails done." And every kid in that auditorium went, "Oh," and I shut my mouth and the principal lit her up. That's not a money problem, George. We do a lot of work in Kenya. You walk in the deepest parts of Kenya and you walk in those villages and tell them you spend $100 getting your nails done. They would look at you and say, "You have lost your mind." Most money problems aren't problems about money. So I love this story, and I can keep going telling you a little bit more about it.